Leading us in the pledge?
Sure.
The beautiful flag.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes, we hear you fine. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Michelle. Just to remind everybody, these meetings are recorded and are posted on our town website, on our YouTube channel. So again, all this meeting will be recorded. This is a special town board workshop, basically organized for the town board members, the 5 of us. It's really a preliminary meeting to try to get us on track with our future examination of zoning code and comprehensive plan. It will be facilitated by our town planner, Bonnie Franson, who will be joining us shortly. We do have a couple of items that we want to deal with right up front. But this, again, will be a town board meeting, really with no public comment at this time. I guarantee you at our future meetings, we will be engaging the public in questions and responding to comments, but this is really just a meeting to get us going in this process. So without any further ado, I think, Michelle, you have the wording for the, we have a couple of appointments, I think, to handle this evening. If you could lead us in those, that would be fantastic.
Okay, I have the wording for the appointment to the Tuxedo Farms LDC. So
great. You could please go ahead with that.
Okay, I would like to make the following motion. Whereas the sole member of the Tuxedo Farms Local Development Corporation is the town of Tuxedo, and whereas the town board is responsible and authorized to appoint directors to the board of this local development corporation and desires to appoint one director to the board of directors of the Tuxedo Farms Local Development Corporation. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that the following person be and hereby is appointed to the board of directors of the Tuxedo Farms Local Development Corporation to serve at the pleasure of the town board or until his successor is appointed and shall qualify. That person is Jay Reichgott. Resolved that the town supervisor is authorized in such capacity to do or cause to be done all such acts and things, to execute and cause to be delivered all such documents, certificates, and instruments as in the town supervisor's judgment may be necessary or advisable in order to carry out the following resolution. Okay, do I have a second?
I'd like to second that, Michelle.
Thank you. I'd like to take a roll call vote.
Discussion ahead of time.
I'm sorry, discussion. Thank you.
Well, what I would just want to add to that is it was brought to our attention that we basically needed 3 people to get this board up and running. And so this board can consist of as many as 9 members. So once myself, Michelle, and Jay get it clear with our consultants what the upcoming issues are related to this board, we plan on expanding the membership of this board as needed. But for right now, we're appointing Jay, and will remain as a board of 3 until further notice if this motion is passed. I need to take a call from Bonnie France in just 1 second. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Our speaker, Bonnie Franson, was just having a little difficulty getting on the website. She's going to hook up right now. I think we'll be fine. Oh, I see she's on. Okay. Very good. I'm sorry,
Hi
is
there.
there any more further discussion by other town board members? Or are you ready for the roll call?
Excuse me, Ken.
Yes, Donna.
Which resolution are you doing? I couldn't get on. I just got on.
That's fine. We're doing the LDC appointment.
Okay, you're just adding J. You're not taking anybody off, correct?
That is correct. Michelle made the motion. I seconded it. Now we're in discussion. I have just a brief point, and I'm not sure if anybody else from the town board has anything to add.
I'm good.
Okay, I'll do the roll call. Dave McMillan,
Aye.
Maria May,
Hi.
Jay Reichgott,
I'm going to abstain. It would be unseemly otherwise, I think.
okay. Ken English,
Aye.
and myself, Michelle Lindsay, aye.
Okay, so that resolution has passed appointing Jay Reichgott to the Town of Tuxedo LDC, commonly known as our sewer LDC. I know we also had one other item, the David Decker part-time officer resolution. I'm not sure where the wording for that is. Do we have it handy, or should we pull that up a little later?
I'll look for it. Maybe we could do it at the end unless Donna has it.
I think that's fine. We could just come back to it.
Okay.
So, I'm just looking for our agenda that was shared by Bonnie today, just a little while ago. Just one second. Thought I had it open. Oh, so Dave, I don't know if Bonnie has her agenda up right now. I actually see it on my screen. I think we're going to try to get Bonnie to share her screen with everybody. I
Yeah,
can
she-
start out just by sharing what the purpose of this workshop is. As I said earlier, this is a first orientation discussion for just town board members, trying to get us started on our zoning code and comprehensive plan review. At this meeting, we're not expecting to take any public comment. Again, it's a very preliminary meeting. As you'll see in a moment, the agenda is basically our town planner, Bonnie Franson, walking us through some background on the zoning code and various resources, zoning map, comprehensive plan. So for the most part, it's really just an opportunity for town board members to get familiar with this whole process and be familiar with all the resources that we need to be familiar with in order to undertake our zoning code review and revisions as necessary. So I'm going to go back to my WebEx screen and see. So Bonnie, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. And if you have any questions about sharing your screen, I think Dave McMillan is your man.
Okay. So on the agenda, I wanted to provide some background on sort of where we are in the process. So that the board members know, the town of Tuxedo has a code book, and this is actually the hard copy of it. But if you go online to eCode, there is a code book, and within that code book, there's a chapter 98, which is the zoning for the town of Tuxedo. And the whole concept of revising the zoning has actually gone back to 2003, 2004. This has been an ongoing dialogue with the various town boards over time. And sort of to walk you down memory lane and where things are, the town had adopted a comprehensive plan back in 1974. And I'm kind of looking away since I'm looking at the screen here. the law, the zoning law, which effectuates the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and I'll get a little more into that, is primarily from 1975. So since 1975, there have been various local laws to update the zoning in certain ways, such as the Planned Integrated Development Law that regulated Tuxedo Farms and once upon a time the Sterling Forest Pit. There was a gaming overlay that was created that was for the casino. So over time, there have been local laws that revise the zoning, but the real core of it is still from 1974, 1975. So since that time, and the comprehensive plan had assumptions with regard to the mix of housing, the mix of non-residential development that would occur to keep a balanced tax base. What has occurred is that major changes in the town have happened, including the various purchases since 1998, between 98 and 2006, of properties throughout the town to become Sterling Forest State Park. So, at this time, and as expressed in the comprehensive plan, when we did a land use analysis of the town, we found about 75% is parkland. And so this left Tuxedo with limited developable areas, especially for tax rateables. Other things that were going on that kind of an impetus for looking at the zoning and the comp plan again was related companies going through the review process of what was called a planned integrated development, which was ultimately approved as Tuxedo Farms, the development we all know. And aside from things going on in the town, there had just been simply regulatory changes that have occurred. New York State town law is where the town gets its authority to regulate zoning, to regulate subdivision, special use permits. And since 1975, there have been a lot of changes in that law, especially procedures, whether it's timeframes for public hearings, requiring public hearings, being preempted, state preempted the town on how to review subdivisions. So all of that has not really been accounted for in the zoning that's in place right now. So the town, back in the mid 2000s, decided to reevaluate the comprehensive plan document. And essentially a comprehensive plan is a document which provides vision for the town in terms of how it wants to develop and grow, as well as the areas it wants to conserve. And New York State town law requires that if you update your comprehensive plan and you adopt it, you have to make your zoning consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's a shall, it's a requirement. So the first plan that was adopted since 1970 was the 2011 comprehensive plan update. Some people may not remember, but the town actually back in 2011 had adopted a comprehensive plan. So what has transpired is that there have been subsequent updates since that time, up until the point where a new comprehensive plan was adopted more recently in 2018. So the 2011 comprehensive plan, just like the 2018 comprehensive plan, incorporated various studies and appendices. And among them, kind of just as background, is, and I'm going to try and share this, see if this works. Can you all see that?
Yes.
So because we're going to have a discussion about the town of Tuxedo town center study and master plan, this is a document that was prepared all the way back in 2003. And it actually was prepared in and around the time that the first approval of Tuxedo Reserve occurred. And this study, which is very useful to look at, was prepared by a consultant with a revitalization committee group. And it has opportunities, constraints. It gets into recommendations such as the business district, the center of the business district, buildings of significance, gathering places. It goes through some of the issues that exist in the hamlet, such as a hostile pedestrian environment. Route 17 limits pedestrian connections, and then goes into goals and objectives, a study area, and then ultimately has a series of recommendations by section as to how infill development may occur. And the Hamlet study had various options, and it depended on the level of development. Options, there were less intense options and more intense options for how buildings may be laid out. So because this is part of the comprehensive plan, this is still a foundational study for when you're reviewing developments within the Tuxedo Hamlet area. So I'm going to turn this off. Is it still sharing, Dave, or it's not? Can you see this one now? Town Tuxedo Community Survey results?
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
So, this is another appendix in the comprehensive plan, and it was a background and a survey sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce back in 2004. And it had a 19% response rate. And again, it goes into general observations about what people were thinking about back at the time that the comprehensive plan was being put together. It talked about Tuxedo fragmented community, in part because of the open spaces between it, and how are ways to create a cohesive community. Businesses in Tuxedo are incidental rather than central to the community. So how can you get commercial revitalization and interest going? So again, this is background to how the comprehensive plan evolved with community input. Appendix C is a recreation plan that was also put together by a consultant back in 2004. And the recreation plan is part of the open space plan because in New York State town law, if you have a site plan that has dwelling units or that has, or a subdivision that has dwelling units, the town can ask for parkland as part of that development, or they can ask for a fee in lieu of land. And so to be able to do that, you do need to have a study. So the town of Tuxedo Recreation Plan did an analysis of population, projected population, facility distribution, and it's the basis on which the town's recreational fees, whenever a subdivision comes in front of it, are based, where you can ask for monies to help fund your recreational program. I think you all have this document. This is the latest Town of Tuxedo Comprehensive Plan update, and it's from April 2018. There are a variety of boards that had worked on it. As you can see, the original was back in 2011, and then finally updated in April 2018. And these are the typical typical sections and contents of a comprehensive plan. Issues and opportunities, what are the goals and objectives, what's the town's landscape. You need basic demographic data on the population and housing within the community because that's who you're planning for. What are land use and zoning trends? And then ultimately there's, based on all the information here in the goals and objectives, there is at the very end an implementation schedule of what should be done to implement the plan. So for instance, install signs throughout the town announcing that there's a Sterling Forest Bird Conservation Area that should be implemented by the town and board and New York State DEC, revegetate areas with native vegetation, have demonstration projects. You're a location for golden winged warblers. Again, the implementation is kind of the sum total of what should be done to implement the vision and the recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So, what has happened.
The timeline you're showing us right now is specific to the recreation plan?
So no, overall comprehensive plan. Yep, so this is the entire comprehensive plan. In terms of the vision, it's really stated at the outset. It talks about the town of Tuxedo. Again, the update of the town's 1972 master plan. It talks about a land use strategy. And there's a vision statement of how you see the town evolving over time. Once upon a time, because of the fact that Sterling Forest hadn't been purchased, you had still these large land holdings that were in private ownership. The 72 plan thought that at one point the build out for the town would be 35 to 50,000 people. Now, obviously that's not going to occur. And so the plan had to be updated to reflect the realities of all the changes that have occurred in the town since 1972. It's also where this plan sets forth kind of a conceptual land use plan, and it talks about how you anticipate the town growing. So I'm just going through here, issues and opportunities. I'm just scrolling through this for people who haven't had an opportunity to take a look at the plan. It's on the website, I understand. I just want to scroll over to the land use and zoning section. So natural resources are mapped. You have demographics. Talks about the neighborhoods within the town. So it's in the land use and zoning section where we start to get into land use and zoning recommendations, and that'll kind of transition us into a discussion of zoning. Here's where I was talking about the changes in the town. Parks and open space, when this was prepared, almost 78, 79% of the town is parks and open space. So that leaves little land available for additional housing, additional commercial development. So we go through, some of the changes that have happened and then make various recommendations for properties, whether it's in Arden, the Ren Fair properties. We talk about some of the challenges, redevelopment of parcels like Zycom. And then we have our land use and zoning recommendations. So starting on page 52, I encourage the town board to read the comprehensive plan starting on page 52, because this is the heart of the conceptual land use plan on which the proposed zoning is based. So this gets into areas, and it talks about areas of the town conceptually, what's intended. So the conservation areas, it talks about the Arden neighborhood. This is the area that's at the northern part of the town. At this point, actually, a lot of the land has been purchased and is going to remain as open space. I think there are conservation easements on it now through various purchases. But the intent was to, even if it remained in private ownership, to be very low density use. We have our residential neighborhoods. We talk about the various zoning districts and what are the densities permitted throughout those zones. And we even get into some of the neighborhoods, Brammertown Road, Eagle Valley, medium density residential areas, Clinton Woods, Laurel Ridge, and then other enclaves. Medium high density residential areas, Route 17. If we think about Tuxedo Manor apartment and where the apartment complexes are in the community. Then we talk about our mixed use hamlets. So in Southfields, we acknowledge that this is a hamlet. It has, typical hamlet type uses, a post office. It has housing. It has commercial uses. And, the plan update recommended that the Southfields hamlet be revitalized to accommodate additional commercial uses, to expand the non-residential tax base. And then we get into Tuxedo Hamlet, which we're going to touch upon this evening. So here, we talk about the Tuxedo Hamlet and the plan update, what it seeks to do, which is preserve the integrity of existing residential neighborhoods, expand pedestrian access within the hamlet, develop a pedestrian and business-friendly environment, create an anchor in the town center, which will draw people into the hamlet itself. At that time, complete improvements to the town's powerhouse park, which it was called at the time. As the Hamlet sewage treatment plant undergoes expansion, analyze the need for additional capacity to accommodate future needs for potential multifamily development within the town center. Acquire or improve land along the Ramapo River so you could create a linear river trail. Rezone the Tuxedo Hamlet to achieve the objectives of the plan. And plan update does not support the acquisition of residential properties by eminent domain to effectuate the objectives of the town center study. At the time that the plan was being prepared, there was some concern that to be able to implement the Hamlet study, that people's properties through eminent domain would be purchased and knocked down. And because that was a controversy, the town board wanted to specifically put into the plan that that's not the intent of the town board. So that's just one example of a particular land use areas where there are recommendations. Again, we get into the Ren Fair area. We talk about research office uses. Again, there's still vacant, underutilized buildings that have been part of, the Sterling Forest business park that once was. We talk about neighborhood commercial uses and general business. And here is, town land use, what the land uses are at the moment. Again, this was back in 2018, so it talks about, what are the land uses right now. So you have a sense of where there's vacant land, where there's residential land, where there's commercial property. And this is the conceptual land use. So this documents where you intend to have open space and recreation, which essentially covers the parklands, the conservation areas. So you can see the Arden area was one. We have another property down in Eagle Valley. The mixed use hamlets, which are shown in purple. You can see this area over here was planned for mixed use tourism related development. Their neighborhood commercial area, which is actually only one property. It's a property down in Eagle Valley that the building hasn't been completed, and it's literally surrounded by parkland, which is why it ends up being one property. But again, this section in particular, I think you should look at because that forms the basis of your zoning. Because this comprehensive plan has been adopted, the zoning has to be consistent with it. Now, at this point in time, if this town board feels that there are other changes that need to be made that are not consistent with what's been adopted, then it may have to re-adopt the comp plan again and make some minor revisions to ensure that there's consistency. So I'm going to close this out.
Maybe that pauses an opportunity for anybody on the town board if they had any questions to this point, or just even anything you wanted to take a moment to chime in.
Bonnie, just for my recollection purposes. So that comp plan we adopted in 2018. We had talked a lot about zoning uses extensively through some workshops prior to that. Maybe it would be good for some of the newer board members to see what those changes were and sort of an overlay prior. You know what I mean? So we could at least give them a starting point, because we had so many conversations about this and they were very vibrant, and I don't want the new members of the board to miss out on what the intent of that was, first of all, and to understand what it resulted in terms of the 2018 version of the comp plan, understanding that we certainly will have revisions coming forward.
Right. I mean, the comprehensive plan has been, revised, and it's been going on for some time. I think I would get, Dave, a summary. I think it'd be easier for me to put a summary of what had happened, going back to my notes from those meetings. I think that would help the board just to give it some context of how it's changed over time. And I can do that.
That sounds great. Now, what's the overall?
Actually, in fact, now that I think about it, Dave, if you recall, sort of an outcome of the desire to have tax ratables and look for development opportunities. If you recall, we put that development map together, the potential map of properties that.
Yeah. Mhm.
So.
Yeah, we actually
you know,
had a couple bites on that and nothing came of it, but I appreciate you did that because I was eye-opening. There's a lot, even though we say 75% of Tuxedo's encumbered, there is a lot of opportunities still out in the Long Meadow area, some out in the eastern parts. So definitely has to be talked about. And so that was my next question. I think that would segue more naturally to Ken. We've been doing this for quite some time. I know since I've been on the board, that's 6.5 years, we've been going at this regular, right? But we never really kind of projected, an end point. Are we going to set some goals? And if we are, could we possibly, earmark sections of that document, Bonnie, to concentrate specifically on those specific areas, and knock out the rest of this plan, in whatever X time frame?
With discussions, very preliminary discussions on how to move this strategy forward, I was thinking in terms of section by section, somewhat driven by what's currently before both the planning board and the town board. The Tuxedo Business District, which I believe we're calling the
Town Center.
Tuxedo Town Center.
Right, Tuxedo Town Center. I think we've been going back and forth calling it the Tuxedo Hamlet Business District, but Bonnie refreshed our memories that we're probably technically calling it the Tuxedo Town Center at this point on the next generation of our zoning code. So that's kind of motivating us to look at that first, because we have some landowners, businessmen who are trying to put plans before the planning board. And so we're trying to tie these two tasks together, bringing us all up to speed on this whole process, but also tackling things that are most before us and the planning board. So that's the strategy there. And again, tonight's meeting is really just to have Bonnie walk us through her agenda of orientation. And so if I could, I'd like to turn it back over to Bonnie, because she has a pretty ambitious agenda here, and I want to make sure we can get to most of it by 8:30.
So,
Okay, Bonnie, please go ahead. I'm going to mute myself.
So the 2011 comprehensive plan that was adopted, and then there was a subsequent 2018, the reality was that there is this lack of having adopted the zoning, and it's just the reality of what's been confronting the town board, where you've had major projects come in front of you that sometimes sideline, the work that's needed or the time that's needed to finally review the zoning. So just as a reminder to everybody, Tuxedo Reserve would come and go, and that sometimes was a lengthy process that really involved a lot of time on the town board. And the other big event that happened, which again really consumed a lot of the town board's time, was Sterling Forest Resort Casino when it came in front of the town. So there just have been these events that have happened which have delayed proceeding with the proposed zoning law. The other side of that is that because there have been some of these delays, the town has been able to do additional updates and further refine the comp plan, which it did in 2018. So kind of getting into the rezoning process, the work was actually started on zoning back in 2011. The concept, for instance, of a tourism business zone, which encompasses the Renaissance Fair properties, dates back to 2011. At one point, the town had posted drafts of the zoning in 2013. And even in 2015, the town board had contemplated, just kind of what Dave, you're alluding to, possibly adopting a tourism business zone, but it didn't occur. So, here we are in 2020, and, what we want to do is move forward now with the zoning. And it's particularly important because it's been in this moratorium process. And there really have been limited issues with that because for the most part, the town board has granted waivers to various potential applicants that want to develop properties in the town. They are moving forward under the existing zoning, which I will get into. And then, we'll talk about the proposed zoning amendment changes. So, and all of this, again, we need to remember that the zoning, we just don't come up with zoning changes or a new zoning map. It all flows from the comprehensive plan. So as this town board moves forward and decides whether there are additional refinements that need to be made or shifts in zoning districts or where you want to allow uses, we always have to go back to the comp plan to see if they're consistent with the comprehensive plan or whether, again, the comprehensive plan has to be updated. With that, I'm going to walk you through. Let's see here, my link. I want to show everybody what the existing zoning looks like and kind of walk you through an exercise here. So all right, so can everybody see what I have up?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you go to ecode360.com, or even if you just type into Google Town of Tuxedo zoning, New York, you will get a link to Chapter 98, which is your zoning. And Chapter 98 consists of a title and purposes, the zoning districts and the zoning map that's incorporated into the zoning chapter, and that lays out the town in a series of districts. And within each district, there are a variety of uses that are permitted or allowed by special use permit, which I'll get into a little later. There are use regulations. The use regulations are what uses you're allowing within each zoning district. And then there are bulk regulations. And the bulk regulations are the dimensional requirements that each use or each property must satisfy to be able to land the use on the property. So for example, if someone wants to put in an office in XYZ zone, they may have to have an acre of land. They may have to have yards that are 50 feet on all sides, so the building can't be within that 50-foot area. It may allow a height of 35 feet or 3 stories. So the bulk regulations are the dimensional requirements that are applicable to a particular use within a particular zoning district. In the town zoning chapter, there are supplementary regulations. They relate to yards. What exceptions to yard requirements? Can you allow a shed? Are you allowed a swimming pool? What is allowed within the yards? There's special regulations for parking and loading. You have performance standards, which regulate, what is allowed in terms of noise, air pollution, particular types of substances, which may be considered pollutants. So some of those are prohibited in the town. Sign regulations, which have been updated several times since the 1975 time period. It was at one time the signs were regulated by the planning board. Then they were regulated by the building inspector. The architectural review board had some control over the design of them. So it's changed over time. And we'll get into that as we get into the zoning. Site development plan review, that's the whole section on if someone comes in and they're proposing a site plan, a new development, and they have to lay it out on the property. These are the regulations that govern. There's some nominal landscaping standards for new uses in the town. Supplemental use regulations, there are particular uses in the town, and they're actually called special uses, which Permitted uses are uses that are allowed by right. They require site plan approval. They don't necessarily have to have a public hearing, but special uses are uses that are considered permitted uses if they meet additional individual standards. So for example, if you want to propose a resort development, it may be allowed only by special use permit. And then there are specific individual standards for how many guest rooms you can have per acre. You may have special parking requirements, special design requirements. So those are special uses, and that's contained in the supplemental use regulations. The planned integrated development section, that is what governs Tuxedo Reserve. When application was made, it was made to the town board, who has to approve a special use for planned integrated development. So this section set out the standards for reviewing a planned integrated development. Here you can see the gaming facility resort development, that those regulations are still in the code. There was a gaming overlay zoning district created, within which you could have possibly have gotten a casino, but they're really of no effect at this point. Clustered open space, that has to do with the type of subdivision where you lay out lots in accordance with the zoning bulk standards, but then you can consolidate and make smaller lots and protect open space. Nonconformities is an area that the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Building Department deal with. And these are essentially any kind of lots or buildings where they don't meet the zoning standards. And how are they handled or treated? Are they pre-existing? Can they expand further? Can they be used? That's that section. Enforcement, this has to do with building permits, certificates of occupancy. The zoning is a Board of Appeals. You have a appellate board, which if the application doesn't meet the zoning requirements, any of them, they can go to the Board of Appeals and seek relief. The town board does have some special permit use authority over the planned integrated development. So a section deals with the town board and its authority to approve special permits. Almost all zoning codes have amendment procedures. What has to be followed if you do amend the zoning code. There's a definition section, and here in this particular code, the existing code, you have a whole article on telecommunications facilities. These are old and dated, and the town board did retain Mike Russo of HDR to provide input, and he has provided that so that we can update the telecommunications section of the zoning law. Architectural review.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? I just
Sure.
want to point out that what you're showing on the screen, that we're actually discussing, and you're walking us through from the code, basically the table of contents and how it's arranged around this article, chapter 98. So,
Exactly.
yeah, I see. I just wanted to make sure that people understood if they had their E-code open at home, that you're actually expanding down the table of contents, and I believe right now you're in 9850 somewhere.
54.
9854, the architectural review.
Right. And for those who are following around, if you click on any of these sections, it'll open up that particular section and provide you with the regulations for that section. Architectural Review Board, Architectural Review, I don't think this has been updated. So what typically happens is the town passes a local law, and the local law has to get filed with the New York State Department of State. In addition, the town board, the town clerk have to send the local law up to general code so that they can update the online version of the zoning. So it's important that the zoning laws always be sent up to general code so that this can be kept up to date. So in this instance, I don't think they've incorporated this particular change. It'll be important that the latest parking revision to send up the local law to general code to make sure that gets integrated. Because frankly, a developer and applicant, they're consultants, they're engineers. the first resource they go to is general code. And so you don't want this to be missing important information that they need to be able to lay out a development, whether it's under the existing code or if it's under the proposed zoning, which will also go into general code. So now, we talked about giving as an example how you navigate in the existing zoning chapter. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. And I'm going to hold something up. Hopefully you can see it. Can you see this document or this map?
I see a map, yes.
So this is the map that is in the back of the code books. And this is from 1974. There have been some revisions made to it that are adopted by local law, but this is your zoning map, the official zoning map. And I was reminding everybody that if you happen to go into the building department and see a map that's up on the wall that's supposed to show zoning districts, that is not the official zoning map of the town. That map was created by Orange County Planning Department. They did a great job, but it's unofficial, and it definitely does not show all of the areas of the town and all the zoning districts accurately. And they did want help in updating it to make sure that it did reflect the town accurately. But I can tell you right now, again, I don't know to what extent you can look at this map, but this area in here is the hamlet, and it's almost impossible to read. So, it's even things of this nature why we go through the process of updating the zoning. This map is from 74. It's been copied and copied again, and it's, on the verge of not being legible. There are probably better versions out there, but this is the one that was in my code book.
Bonnie?
Well, an extension of this discussion, you're showing us a map from 1974, but I'm also looking on that table of contents of Chapter 98 zoning, Article 2, that talks about districts and zoning maps. So would this 1974 map be the one that you see under 98-5 zoning map, or no?
So under 98.5 zoning map, it will list all, if you open that up, let me share again. One second. Okay. So this is what you see when you open up that section. It lists the zoning districts, talks about the zoning map, but what does it tell you? Editor's note: for purposes of convenience, a copy of the zoning map is included in a pocket at the back of the paper code. So unlike other general code zoning chapters for other communities, they usually attach an updated map right into general code. Yours does not. So you have to rely on the paper version. So if I go to the paper,
We couldn't have even scanned the map that we're using and to get it digitally on this code, or?
we can scan it.
Yeah, Bonnie, since you seem to have the only legible copy, if you could scan that and get it out to the board, that would be useful. If you Google for the Tuxedo zoning map, you can get from the state the unofficial version that's in pretty colors, but doesn't carry a force of law. But it would be useful to have both of them.
Yes. So Orange County Planning Department, as you just mentioned, Jay, Orange County Planning Department has the official or the unofficial zoning map, a little more legible for you to read. The caveat is it isn't entirely accurate, unfortunately. So the one that is official, subject to any revisions that have been made that are listed at the end of the zoning or the code book, that's the official version, and we certainly want to update it. So, normally how someone goes about determining how they're allowed to use their land is they first determine what zoning district they're located in. And we're going to go through right now sort of an example of if we look at Tuxedo Hamlet and the properties that front to Route 17, those properties are in a zone called the Neighborhood Business NB zone. And the way you determine what's allowed in the NB zone is you would go to, at the beginning here of chapter 98, where it has general references, there are, yes.
We're only seeing the general use and bulk requirements. Do you have a different screen up in front of you?
Let me see here. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, so when you click share content,
Yep.
underneath the main screen, it says screen 1, that's like share everything, but underneath is applications. So you can either share the individual application you have in front of you or hit screen.
Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah, there you
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I must have stopped sharing. I must have hit something. So this is the beginning of the zoning chapter. And if you go to the general references at the very beginning, there's a series of PDFs and links that you can click on. So if we're looking for what's allowed in the NB zoning district, we would hit this link, which is 098C, general uses NB and HB zoning district. Can everybody see this chart?
Yes.
Okay. So here is the existing table of general use regulations that regulate uses right now throughout the town. And here you'll find, this is the district neighborhood business. And you'll see a series of columns, and uses permitted by right are uses that are allowed. They don't need any special use permit. The planning board at its option can require a public hearing. It doesn't have to hold a public hearing. Any of the asterisks on this table indicate that a site plan approval is required. And then you'll also see uses by special permit of the Board of Appeals. What's important to note about the existing zoning is that special uses are regulated by the Board of Appeals. And one of the amendments to Chapter 98 that's proposed is that special permits, like most of the municipalities in New York State, that they get reviewed and approved by the planning board, who also does the site plan review and approval, so that it's one-stop shopping, it's more efficient and a little more developer friendly. But right now your code is set up that if someone wants a dry cleaning establishment, a laundromat, they first have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They have to get a special use permit from them, and then they have to get separate site plan approval from the planning board. Here you could see there's certain uses that are allowed by special permit of the town board. They're laid out here. These are accessory uses. So these are uses that are allowed that are incidental and accessory to the primary uses. So things like storage, parking, signs, loading, those are all accessory to the main use of a property, which is one of these uses.
So you're in column D right now.
I'm in column D, yes. So column E, permitted accessory signs, that just makes reference back to the sign regulations that are in the code. Column F, minimum off-street parking. At this moment, the table of use regulations puts the parking requirements within the table itself. So if you're a retail store or shop, you need 1 space per 200 square feet of floor area and sales use. That's how you determine your parking demand or your parking requirements. There's also.
We just changed that, so.
You did.
We already had some updates for this. Yeah, we'll get them to you.
Exactly. So,
We
yeah.
can change those for existing businesses, not for any new construction.
Right. So if it was new construction, then they have to adhere to any of the parking requirements.
If it's
And
existing,
Sorry, go ahead.
existing building and it's sold and they change the use, they have to go through the same process. Correct,
Well,
Bonnie?
we made it existing structures.
Okay.
So if you change owners, it doesn't necessarily change. I don't think we ruled out change of use either. I think it goes with the building. Now, what happens if you tear the building down? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And different buildings put at different uses can have very different parking demand. So when you all go through the whole chapter, comprehensively and look at a cohesive document, and you look at the uses that could occur within an area or a zoning district, you might want to think about whether there should be some refinement to existing buildings. There are realities that if you have a building there, you only have a certain amount of parking available, like in the Hamlet area. But then again, if a building was going from office use to suddenly all residential, that might be problematic if the residential development demands a lot more parking than the office use. So, something to consider as we go through the parking standards. But
So we're going to, since we have Tuxedo Town Center, that will become its own distinct district and have its own bulk regulations or general use regulations.
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just needs to be added. Okay, got you.
Yep. So
Thanks, Jay, for that answer.
So H, additional use regulations applying in all districts. These are just miscellaneous non-residential performance standards, storage and disposal of solid waste. They're just additional standards, which frankly kind of bog down the table, and we're putting into the actual language of the zoning rather than putting it in a table. And I'll show you the new proposed tables and how you navigate them. So one of the problems that has always existed, and it's been very confusing, is navigating back and referencing other tables. Because if I look here at neighborhood business, it says that under 1, same as R1 numbers 5, 6, and 7. So you don't see all the uses readily, what's allowed in the neighborhood business. You have to go back, and then you have to go to the R1 district. And are you seeing this?
Yes.
Okay. So I just said same as R1, 5, 6, and 7. So then we have to go to the R1 district. 5 is a church or similar place of worship. 6 is a school, general instruction. 7 is libraries, museum, and art galleries. So to fully understand and comprehend what's allowed in the neighborhood business district, there's a lot of looking back toward other districts. And it's just, this is one level of complexity. And then we have to add on the additional level of complexity, which is looking at the bulk tables. So as you can see in this existing general use table, there are no bulk standards. It's simply the uses. To determine what dimensional requirements apply to each of these uses, you have to go to a separate set of tables. And so if I go back to our neighborhood business chart, let's say, for example, someone wants to put a retail store and shop. So it's in column A and it's number 2. So our neighborhood business, we have to go back out and pick one of these bulk tables. So you see general use, and then you see bulk use. We'll go to MB. And this is the chart that has the bulk standards. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So now to figure out how that retail use would be regulated, we have to look under NB. They have these groups. Again, some more cross-referencing, but it says for uses listed below, use column number 1, same as groups for I1, I2, I3. So you have to figure out where I1, I2, and I3 are to understand what applies to column A, use column A number 1. Getting back to retail, again, it's 2. So here you have use columns A, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this is where our retail is regulated on this particular row. So the minimum site area is 10,000 square feet. The minimum lot width, which is, for general purposes, your lot width is kind of if you think of your street frontage, how wide does the lot have to be? 100 feet. Front yard, you have to have 25 feet. Required side yard, total both side yards, this says none or 10 minimum if provided. The reason for this is because these types of uses in the Hamlet district, it was anticipated that you might have row style buildings. And when you have a row style building on individual lots that are attached, you don't need a yard. So that's why it's 0. And again, you just go down the line here and it tells you what applies to any retail use that's proposed within the neighborhood business zoning district. So you could see this was an easy example. There have been examples where we've had to refer to, 2 or 3 use tables, 2 bulk tables to figure out what's allowed. It gets confusing, and then there's room for error. So,
Is there, I mean, I'm looking at this from a different perspective. I understand you're saying complexity, and I get that, and there needs to be complexity in here. But there must be a way to create a decision tree process for this. Because I can just see 4 different people getting 4 different answers out of it,
Well, that has been the problem. That's absolutely been the problem.
Don't the new bulk and use tables combine it? What you sent out, what I sent out earlier today?
Yes. So this is a good time. Does anybody have questions? And the reason we're
One
kind
other
of
question point I would have, even just with what you're currently showing us. I mean, nowadays, you have hyperlinks that would make these transitions to these other tables easier as opposed to trying to figure this out?
yes.
There's an app for that, Ken.
I bet there is.
If there isn't, I'll make one. I'll tell you.
Yeah, general code. I mean, you can search. They can have hyperlinks. Once this gets codified, but even before it gets codified, even within a Word document, you can create hyperlinks. So there's ways to navigate easier through.
What I was thinking about was kind of like what I do for a living in analysis. I create forms, and there's true or false answers to the forms, and there's input level at the form level, which will then at the final step take you to exactly what you need to know, and you download, right?
Yeah.
That makes it easier for everybody who engages it to at least come out with the same answer, right?
Right.
You're gonna put a whole lot of consultants out of business. The engineering.
I'm getting it now.
But wouldn't it be good to show the combined bulk and use tables that you put together, and we could see,
Yep.
how that, right now, I think that would be great.
Yep. So I'm going to get out of that zoning. And if I could figure out where my WebEx is, share your content. So this is the new proposed zoning map. Can y'all see this?
Not yet.
Is it sharing now?
This is what you sent out earlier this afternoon also?
Yes. So you can't see the
No, Bonnie, we can't see it.
all right, hold on a second again. Share content. Share.
And it's still a black screen. What application are you using to share it?
This is a PDF, so it's first asking me to share, then it says share application. And
Okay.
I hit
It's
yes.
on the side, Bonnie. It's like on the side for some reason. Like we can see a little bit of it on the edge.
Here's what you have to do. So just stop sharing.
Okay.
Now go back when you press share content.
Yep.
The very top one that says screen 1 on your side, you see that?
Yep.
Well, that would be share anything that's on your screen currently. Underneath that is like your browser. If you have it up in a browser, you can select the browser and then it will see it that way too. I'm not
Okay.
sure what you were selecting.
So let me try sharing screen 1. Are you seeing the agenda?
Yes.
Now you see a map?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. So this is the new zoning map, or it's a draft zoning map. And let me zoom in. So what we've done is there is a legend for the zoning map which describes each of the zoning districts. And they're all colorized. And we've also included any abbreviations to help define the various areas. And for the hamlets, we have zoomed in. And so, for instance, Southfield's hamlet. In addition, we have an inset box and we've included additional labels so that it's easy to see what the properties are. I have an updated map. This isn't it, but we have the same thing for the Tuxedo Hamlet. But you can see here the properties that are along Route 17 are in this kind of pinkish bubblegum color. And that coincides with the TTC proposed zoning district. So here we see it, TTC, Tuxedo Town Center.
Okay.
So now that you know you're in the TTC Tuxedo Town Center, the question is, well, what uses are allowed? And here I made a PDF of all the general use and bulk requirement tables. And so if you go to the top, you'll see the name of the zoning district, Special Recreation SR District. So we just scroll to Tuxedo Town Center. So here for each of the uses, we've incorporated the bulk standards. So you don't have to go back. Anything that's allowed in the Tuxedo Town Center is listed in the table. All of the bulk use regulations that apply to the individual uses are set forth for each use. And many of them are the same. But you know, from our perspective and from having worked with the groups that we worked with when this was all putting together, including the building department, they just wanted something that was far more straightforward, that they didn't have to do all this, you know, cross-referencing between various tables. So this right now is the proposed draft general use and bulk requirement table. So if you zoom in, multifamily dwellings, dwellings above ground floor retail, in other words, mixed uses, retail uses, personal service, commercial use. Those are like nail salons, hair salons, banks, business, professional office, medical office. They're all listed. Then we have the use type, and we have an SU for if it requires a special use permit. And special use permits, again, have their own individual standards, plus they require a public hearing. And you have permitted uses. Then there's an indication of whether a site plan is required. So it's either yes or no. You have your minimum lot areas for each of the uses. Again, and just like the other tables, you have yards established and minimum lot depth, building height, street frontage, density, etc. So this is the proposed use table of how you would navigate to understanding what's allowed within that particular zoning district. And again, if you continue to scroll, you'll get to the neighborhood business, general business, tourism business, all the other use and bulk tables that apply to the zoning districts that are shown on the new zoning map.
I think part of the what you're trying to demonstrate here is, first of all, an improved map, an improved tabling where all these different permitted uses within the Tuxedo Town Center that we were just looking at are laid out clear to your eye. One question I have in my mind, though, is when you look at that map, the pinkish bubblegum color, as you said, obviously is a limited number of properties. Was there any effort made to see how many of those properties would have fallen into those 10,000 square feet categories, those 20,000? I mean, or was it just these kind of businesses typically require these size lots? Or is it mapping back to actual properties that you could predict, this property could only be used for X, Y, and Z because of the limitations of the size of the lot?
The bulk table, to some extent, we took what's allowed now and transferred it to the uses in the new use and bulk table. Some of these properties may be smaller, some may be bigger. And any applicant can always ask for an area variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals if they want to build on a lot that is smaller. At one point, I seem to recall, again, this has been going on for a long time, looking at the size of the lots, but we can certainly do that again. As we go through the zoning districts, now that everything's in geographic information systems, it's much easier to query what all the lot sizes are within that particular zone. And
As I'm looking at this bubblegum map here, if each of those little sectioned off squarish plots were actual, kind of indicating the size of these lots. I mean, first of all, I can't imagine there's more than 75 lots there. I think I'm being generous in saying how many of them there are in this district. And so I guess I'm just thinking it's not such an extensive list of lots that cross-referencing it back actually to the square feet, like you're saying, Bonnie. It just seems to be that last bit of information that would say, hey, for this particular lot, you're already up against, this is what your square footage is. So it would require a variance if you went outside of any of those table requirements, if I'm saying that halfway clearly.
right. I mean, the other thing is that sometimes, again, the town board and the groups that are reviewing the zoning do want that as a minimum lot size. And they may want to, if anything, they're trying to encourage consolidation. So that if you do a building, it's not on substandard lots, you do it on 2 lots, so that you can provide parking. You can provide the adequate infrastructure, accessory infrastructure that you need to serve that particular use. But again, as we go through this and the town board, in particular reviews the use regulations and the zoning districts, we can look at the bulk regulations and see how things fit.
Hey, Bonnie. I'm just looking at the pink areas in the town center plan. And things on the west side of Store Road that are mixed use are not included. They seem to be in a color that is residential.
So, Store Road.
So you have Route 17.
This, I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes.
I can't.
It's a very small, it's not the arrowhead. It's kind of near, you can barely see Route 17 on the pink.
Yeah.
It's just below that.
So this is the school property. This is the lawn area in front of the school.
Oh, I see it. Right. Okay.
This is the high school. This is the elementary school. So do you want me to go north?
Yeah,
Because
north.
everything is bubble gum going north along 17.
Right.
Right there, stop, yeah. I see what you're saying now, Michelle, it's orange instead of, so Michael Bruno's current or former real estate office would be not pink in this case. I see what you're saying.
Right.
All right, so Bonnie,
And the
see
barber
that-
shop.
you see this, the little loop circle right in the center of the orange there, about halfway up your page there?
Halfway. Oh, up here. Yep.
That
Yep.
loops, not nursery, but the one down below. It's a small circle. If you go to the east of that, there's 2 roads that travel north. One of them is Store Road. One of them is Library Road. And that's what Michelle's talking about. So that Library Road section and those residences that are on the west side of it should be also incorporated into the TTC. And I think, yeah.
So it's the 2 properties that are next to each other. Yep.
Right where your
Yep.
cursor is.
Yeah.
Now, what did we want to do? I mean, we could talk about this later, but since we have it in front of us, everything to the west side of that road, those are houses. Do you want that to be?
Right. These are all houses.
Yeah.
So I question when we start looking at this town center zoning and the bulk use tables, do we have to really, as you were saying, and I think, and Ken, and I think, people are saying is, do we have to really zero in on what is actually there and the size of the lots? And,
Yeah, I think you have to look at this from the perspective of, again, this is a
Like, this is-
draft. This is a draft, and when these drafts were put together, some of them predated Mr. Bruno's proposals to do some mixed use or some alternative uses. So, again, this is what happens because there's been time that's lapsed and other people have come in with additional ideas. So if those ideas are supported, then we need to ensure that we're capturing all the lots that should be included that you want to see as commercial use or as mixed use, et cetera.
Okay.
How far the northern limit of TTC district is? Can you scroll up a little bit?
Yep. Let me actually.
Questions also go
Okay.
to the question of making sure that the comprehensive plan sort of specifies what we want these areas to become,
Mhm.
and whether or not we need to look at amending that. But
Right, and to consider, for instance, were they captured in the Hamlet study? Because that's part of the, that's an appendix and it's part of the comprehensive plan, which anticipated some redevelopment, so we need to look at that. Just quickly, I wanted to zoom in, so you'd ask what the northernmost,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like Rob Reno's property maybe over there.
I think it's before that, actually. I think this might be town property.
Okay.
It's like Powerhouse Park in south.
Yep, so I think Powerhouse
Okay.
Park and South is in the TTC, it's part of the Hamlet, and then the Reno, the landscapers, et cetera, are in the bluer.
I see.
Yep, and that's general business.
All right, thanks, Bonnie.
And the beauty of having
I think what you're trying to help us do here, Bonnie, again, without discussing the nuances and individual properties and purposes, is okay. Now we're looking at this draft map, which obviously is nothing on our town code or website at this point. This is something that's basically a draft, and but this is what I'd hoped we were going to do today: is look at what's currently up. I think you did a good job of walking us through, the table of contents of the E-code 360, 98, and making sure we all know how to access that. And you've made it clear that the map that we currently have goes back so far that it's, I think Christopher Columbus used to navigate to find the new world. And so obviously there's been an attempt to upgrade this map, which is what you're showing us now. And you've also illuminated to us the proposed arrangement of bulk tables to neighborhood districts that at which you've shown us kind of where we're trying to go.
Right.
And what we already have. And I think that was a big goal for me, at least, in setting up this workshop. So I think
One
you're
of the
accomplishing those tasks well.
One of the, I'll just give you a resource quick. Second. So if you ever looking at a parcel, let me stop sharing.
Okay.
I didn't have to do that. Hold on. Share content. What are you seeing right now? Are you just seeing a woman on a beach?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, nice place.
It's nice and serene. Are you now seeing my Google?
Yes.
On the tax map?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Orange County has a nice program called Orange County GIS. And if you go to Dynamic Maps, Base Map, allow it to run Adobe. Because as you're exploring the zoning and as you're exploring the map and the uses, you might want to just get information on particular properties. So I'm just zooming in at the moment. Here we are back in the hand.
Yep.
And if I zoom in a little more, at some point, tax parcels may be a little slow because of everything that's running. But here we go. Here are tax parcels. So for instance, you can go to click on base maps. You can select, here's all the way back to 94, but maybe a current map. And now you can see the Tuxedo Plaza. And if you just select it, it'll give you the section block and lot number, property information, go to public access, and then it'll tell you it's a multi-use business. It'll give you the address, the legal description of the property. It'll tell you what, if it's in the sewer district, what other districts it's located in. You can get the owner and sales information, who owns the property. You can look into improvements. So it's just a useful tool to get information on properties in general. And it's nice because you can really zoom in. And when you're looking at the zoning map, you could see the shape of a lot and, determine, okay, if this is showing up as TTC, what property is this? And by selecting it, you'll get more information. Exactly, that's the old junction. I think this is the church.
Yep.
And here we have Augusta Properties. We have Orange Top, right? So, and then we get down here and we have the new sewer plant. This may be slightly older where see things were under construction. But again, so we were talking specifically about those two properties earlier. So here we have the Bruno property, and these were the two where you were referencing.
Yes.
So again, I think from my perspective, it's just a tool to help you wayfind if you're looking at the map and saying, well, why is this property zoned for this purpose? And you can zoom out. I just want to point out, here you can see on the aerial, the grading that's been done for the first phase of Yep. And then this is our one. So the one property that we've talked about that's NB, that's this one here.
Right.
And again, you can click on that and you can find out, well, who owns it now? Sterling Mine, LLC. Purchased it in 2019. And it's supposed to be a neighborhood shopping center. It was approved as a multi-use building. So again, it's if you just type in Orange County GIS, Orange County, New York GIS, you don't get, you don't end up in California. Orange County, New York GIS, in Google, you can wayfind your way to this particular application to help you when you're looking at the maps. Okay.
Helpful, thank you.
Yep.
I know you've referenced that a few times when I was talking to you, but now I'm confident I could actually find it and use it.
Good. So I'm just going to put on this screen, I sent you all the zoning code and I threw in a table of contents. And so here, it does follow to some extent the old zoning, but the definitions are now in the front. We have establishment of zoning district, the use regulations, area and bulk requirements. This is very similar to the existing code. Some of the differences are we have certain new uses like the adaptive reuse of historic buildings, how you regulate municipal uses and facilities. This is based on something called the Monroe Balancing of Public Interest Tests. So this is a particular procedure that you use when, let's say, the Village of Tuxedo Park wanted to put a facility in the town, how you would balance the interests. and how you regulate the use in the property when it's another municipal or a community facility type use. We were adding something on solar facilities. This is for people who want to have individual solar facilities as part of a residence, et cetera. If you recall, I sent not too long ago, there is this list of items that we haven't quite finished grappling with. We started to touch upon it at the end of the rezoning process with the former board, where we were talking about indoor shooting ranges, outdoor shooting ranges, whether we wanted to allow large-scale solar facilities. So, some of those topics need to be finally resolved so that we can finish up some of the regulations associated with them. Parking and loading has been updated to provide more flexibility. And we would have to update this section to make sure that the new local law is referenced in the zoning. There are environmental controls and design standards. So we have regulations related to wetlands and water courses in the Rampo River. At the time, the town board was concerned about some of the filling that was occurring on properties that go down to the Rampo River, and that you had, erosion and sedimentation issues occurring. So there's some standards for that. We now have landscaping and screening standards, which we didn't have before. We have lighting standards, which we didn't have before, how to control lighting so that you retain that rural character and, preserve your dark sky. Cluster developments is still there, but it's been updated to reflect current New York State town law. We updated the clearing, filling, and grading section. There were concerns that sometimes homeowners wanted to do some grading on their property, and they were being thrown into a process where they had to submit plans, they had to go through a public hearing process. And frankly, when they're in front of a board and you have consultants, it can be costly to a homeowner. So when you go through the code, you'll see that this section has been updated so that more minimal amounts of changes in grading, they don't have to go to the planning board. It's just a building inspector review. Storage and disposal of solid waste, that's just a standard as far as, especially if you have commercial businesses, screening solid waste, dumpsters, etc. There's now a special
And what you're showing us now is
new zoning, the proposed zoning.
basically in the same order as what you were showing us on the E Code 360. This is
Exactly.
This is a one screen. This will be the new table of contents,
Exactly.
E Code 360, that needs to be updated. And I guess what I'm looking at the time at 8:28.
Yep.
So.
This is just for the board members' benefit, so that
Oh, definitely.
the version you have actually, so when this last iteration came out of, I think, the town attorneys, and it was missing a table of contents. So I'm going to resend you this so that I can automatically generate a table of contents. So it's easier for you to wayfind in the document. But, yes, this is the new table of contents with new sections.
So for the people who are on this board, May 20, is this May 2019 or 18? I can't even remember.
This is 2019.
2019, this draft came to us. So this was the effort that I believe it was you and Howard, and I'm not sure who else had synthesized the comments from the planning board and their consultants. And so in my layman's terms, this is the version that you guys consolidated for myself, Dave, and Michelle to consider as carryover, right? Is that what this is?
That's correct. And there's even another version which I did not provide. Again, there was additional discussion about, so certain uses, whether we were going to allow solar farms on certain properties. We talked about an overlay zoning district. We talked about, again, certain uses. And the telecommunications update, that's not in there yet. I want you to kind of go off of this, and then we have to revisit those other uses.
So to Dave's point earlier of some kind of an overlay to be able to see, okay, I guess it would be a three-way overlay if we really were going to what was, to what the planning board and their consultants recommended, and then this synthesis where you and Howard and whoever else was involved merge those three worlds together to what we're looking at now. If that were, so I guess, Dave, what I'm just getting at is, how do we compare those iterations? Maybe it's part by part as we're looking at, if we start with the town center, maybe it might be necessary for us to go back and just say, okay, what was the planning board's recommendations? Are they in this version, or is there anything we would have wanted to consider? Is that touching on what you were saying, Dave?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ken. I mean, I was kind of focusing on significant changes from prior versions, and I know there was some significant ones. I mean, I don't think we have to go through with a fine tooth or comb, but I think we need to just nail those significant changes. And on top of that, we have some other things to think about. I just want to say this in closing, because I know we're running up against the clock. I take this as a living document. I don't think it should be set in any chronological constraints. So I think we need to, at regular intervals, investigate or take a look at and view, where are the roadblocks that occur from our own hands, right? Based against applicant pain, so on and so forth. And that's working with the other boards, the zoning board of appeals and the planning boards together, right? And one last thing, Bonnie, you're going to love me for this, but I noticed in our town code currently that we do not have an article that covers rental of residential housing. If we came into an opportunity of a large inventory of rental houses, we definitely need to address that one as well. So I don't know if there's any standard fare for that. Maybe you could take a shot at
Are we talking about the Airbnbs?
that, and any other subdivisions that could potentially be built that would be only rental and not for sale.
Right.
That's a changing market environment right now. So I want to make sure that we, that we embrace that.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consult with the attorneys about. It's often difficult to regulate ownership. So if someone wanted to rent the house, it's very difficult to regulate. But Airbnbs are almost like commercial uses, and
single owner, 100 houses. Let's just say start there.
Yeah.
Right? Not the.
yeah,
This guy rents his house to that guy, or whatever it is. We
Right,
still have to have
right.
code for that, because there has to be enforcement, there has to be inspection, and all that stuff isn't covered in our current code. So that's all I have.
What I was suggesting earlier, or actually the previous conversation, first we kind of do this tonight, look at the town center, and the next that needs to is the zoning 1, 2, 3, and 4, and what's allowed in each of those zones. And I think that goes to what you're saying, because there have been changes in certain properties to R4, and so if we could look at that and next, and then within that discussion, talk about what the uses are you're talking about. So maybe that could be the next thing we look at after we kind of take a look at breaking this down into pieces, looking at the overview, then the town center, maybe then all the different R zones, what's changed throughout the town, because we've had a lot of changes in that, and then look at the uses within each of those zones.
I agree.
I also suggest that we look at Bonnie's agenda that she put together for us tonight, Bonnie, and are there elements of this agenda that you didn't get to yet?
So
Please go ahead.
I think in some way we covered everything. Proposed zoning amendments, we have changed some new uses. Signs, we've updated. Oh, there's a typo, sorry about that. But you know, a lot of it has to do with being content neutral. So I know the attorneys updated that. Obviously, the zoning map, there have been changes in the zoning districts. The text, we went through the use and bulk table, how to navigate that. We talked about changes in design standards. We talked about incorporating local laws, amendments. I talked about how we're updating it to address any procedural changes in New York State town law. We walked through how to navigate through the existing zoning. You did mention to scan the old map, which we'll have to do. And, you know, we navigated then through the proposed zoning map and the zoning and use and bulk table process. So actually the item we haven't addressed it's the last item on the agenda, which is next steps in the zoning review process. And so I think the town board just needs to put together a schedule of, you know, how you want to accomplish this. We've been in a development moratorium. We really need to get out of it. So we need to move forward, decide if you're going to adopt items, if you're going to look at the entire code and adopt it entirely, or if you're going to adopt it by changes in districts. I would prefer that it be done all in one shot. I think there are procedural complications of having to adopt it piecemeal, having to go through the seeker review process every time. So in the best of all worlds, we would have a real good set time frame to go through the entire document, make the changes, and, you know, finish up the process. We probably have to have another public hearing if there's significant changes. It was referred to Orange County already, Department of Planning. We had some comments from them. But again, the process depends in part on what this town board does, to the extent to which it wants to make changes. You know, then we decide to what extent we have to, again, open up public hearings and do some additional referrals. But really, I think you collectively need to decide, you know, and come up with the schedule to get through the document.
You've guided us through a very productive first orientation step, and I'm sure we'll all reflect after tonight and have our individual discussions, and then collectively try to flesh out that number 5. What are our next steps? I would imagine some of what we'll learn will be through some of the issues we're facing right now with applications that are in front of the planning board now. That'll help us to look very deeper at this town center, and, you know, just even looking at this draft map, just seeing, oh wow, why isn't this property included in there, and that kind of stuff. So I think you've got us to where we can start thinking about that number 5, and thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Bonnie.
And if anybody has comments or questions or needs information, they can always email me, and I'll make sure to send you what you might need. I do have, again, on my list to scan the old existing zoning map and get that to everybody to take a look at for reference purposes. At some point, there was a compare doc, but with all the changes, sometimes it gets messy to look at a comparison document with red lines and you know, strike throughs. But sometimes it's just better to go through it than do that.
Bonnie, this is Jay. I got a large format scanner in my office, so if all this COVID stuff is making scanning hard for you, if you can get me the document, I can handle the scanning.
Okay. Where are you, Jay?
Here, sitting in my house in Tuxedo. But
Okay. So I could mail it to you or hand it off, and then you could scan it.
Exactly.
Okay.
If
Great.
that makes your life easier.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, because I think otherwise we'd send it to our other office and scan it over there. So you're right around the corner from me. I'm in Monroe, so I could always shoot it down to you. And if you could do that, that'd be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
He has a couple of masks he can give you guys if you need to meet up, and you could leave the map on Jay's hood of his truck and somehow pass it off. That might work.
Yeah, we do it now. We're picking up stuff at other towns for reviews. People are still conducting business, so just gotta be careful.
All right, guys, so I want to move us to our last order of business. I think we had one resolution we need to pass, but thank you, Bonnie, for your well-organized orientation to us. I definitely learned a lot, and now we look forward to giving you feedback and helping us guide to the next step in this process.
Thank you. I'm gonna sign off so you can finish up your business.
Thanks
Thanks,
again,
Bonnie.
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 Stay safe, guys.
You too.
You too. So can I have the wording here if you need it?
I would be happy if you would be willing to read it and conduct the roll call vote and any possible discussion that needs to happen. If you're comfortable with that, I certainly am.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to appoint David Decker to the position of part-time police officer in accordance with the current terms and conditions of employment and compensation as provided to all part-time police officers. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Dave. Discussion?
Just ask that, was Howard Crowder involved in the wording of that resolution?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent, because just wanted to make sure he gave the seal of approval. So I don't have any further discussion.
Okay, no further discussion. I'd like to take roll call vote. Dave McMillan,
Yes.
Maria May,
Yes.
Jay Reichcott,
Yes.
Ken English,
Yes.
Michelle Lindsay, myself, yes. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Was that the last order of business that we had on our agenda? I think it was.
I think so, unless something came through, Donna, beyond that.
Well, the only other thing that I know that came up was
I'm all good, thank you.
Okay.
the emergency repairs to Town Hall roof. Shari had circulated a quote from Precision Roofing. I think it was $2,450, but also of note, we did have to pay a $250 initial site. I think they had to remove obstructions from gutters or a drain there. So why I think that might be significant is because I don't know if there's any bidding process. In my mind, is it a $2,500 threshold? I'm sorry?
Yes, you're correct, Ken. It's at your discretion, at the board's discretion at that level.
Okay, so I just want, I know this is emergency work, basically. Maybe Jay looked at a little bit of the details of the quote, but we definitely brought it to Precision's attention that we're looking to redo the whole roof, and we're just trying to do enough to carry this roof for about 6 months, I think is what the quote said, that this was not much more than a patch job, I guess. And as long as we all understand that, and but also it's an emergency. We obviously don't want this leak to continue because it'll only further damage the property and create potential mold issues and things like that. So obviously there's urgency to getting this done. So I'm just wondering, does this require a resolution roll call vote right now? Should we just do it to ensure that we all have publicly stated we support moving forward with Precision Roofing? I mean, I'm just trying to figure this out as we're going.
Yeah, always a good idea.
So I guess without Howard's advice, I'll try to state some kind of a motion. I'd like to make a motion that the town board approve the quote that was received from Precision Roofing for $2,450 to do the emergency repair work to the town hall roof. And in lieu, without further quotes, with the understanding that this basically is an emergency situation, that we don't want any further damage to happen to this building. So I know that's a wordy resolution, but I guess I'd like to put that motion and see if somebody wants to second it.
Second, Michelle.
I guess I'll call a roll call vote on that.
I just have,
Oh,
sorry,
man, I'm sorry. Discussion, Jay, please go ahead.
just one point. Let's go with whatever the actual number in the quote was that Sherry circulated earlier today, unless you're dead sure on your amount.
It was $2,450.
All right, very good.
So I guess we could put a threshold of $3,000 just to be sure. Is that another thing we might want to consider, just in case went over that?
Sounds good.
Sure. Yes.
So I'll extend that to a $3,000. I'm sorry?
Not to exceed $3,000.
To exceed $3,000. So I'll do a roll call vote. Dave McMillan,
Yes.
Maria May,
Yes.
Michelle Lindsay,
Yes.
Jay Reichcott,
Yes.
and Ken English, yes.
Ken,
I-
I'll check with Howard. I'm sorry.
Please go
I'll
ahead.
check with Howard to make sure the wording with that.
That would be excellent. With the understanding, explained to him, we did our best ad hoc resolution. It's just a refinement.
Sure.
That would be excellent.
Okay.
And if he needs us to weigh in again by email, just saying that we all agree with the refinement, we could do that. But due to the emergency nature, I'd like Shari to know tomorrow that she can go ahead with contacting Precision.
Okay, great.
Okay, I don't know of any other further business that needs to be conducted here. So I'll wait just a couple of seconds just to see if anybody does have anything. I'd like to thank our audience's patience and for participating. Again, this was a first attempt to orient the town board to this process. We look forward, as Dave was saying earlier, to working closely with the planning board, the ZBA, to refine this process and make sure that we come up with a comprehensive plan and a code that looks to advance the notions that we're trying to see happen in this town. So thank you to everybody. And so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 8:48 p.m. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll do a roll call vote. Ken English, aye. Dave McMillan,
Aye.
Jay Reichcott,
Aye.
Maria May,
Hi.
and Michelle Lindsay.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. I guess, Dave, you'll close the meeting with the technological end, and thank you, and stay safe, and we'll be connecting Thursday at 3:15. Town employees are encouraged to participate in our WebEx. Thank you, everybody. Good night now.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.